What's quack-a-lackin'? What's quack-a-lackin'? I'm still out here at the Pipestone National Monument, just outside of Pipestone, Minnesota. I came out here to do Wednesday's video, and so it's already been posted up a couple of days ago, where I came out and I talked about what makes this national monument a sacred site. In fact, I describe it as being the most sacred site in the history of the North American continent, and I 100% believe that to be so. If you feel otherwise, please let me know what site you think is the most sacred. But being out here has really inspired me. I want to tell you guys the story today of the time that the Great Spirit worked through me. He did. He worked through me to deliver a blessing to a tribe of Navajo in New Mexico. And as the Great Spirit has a way of doing to show his gratitude to me for doing that, he worked through someone else to deliver a blessing right back to me of equal magnitude. So it's a really good story. I can't wait to share it with you today. If you'd like to see the other Pipestone video, I will put a link up above in the top right corner. You can just tap that link anytime you want and it will take you to it. But yeah, this place is absolutely beautiful and amazing. Let me just give you a quick look around where we're at. So I am coming back through the loop trail. I would love to go venture out in there, but the rules of this place are you have to stay on the paved trail. This particular field is typically a good place to see deer. And in fact, when I got here today, before I even got the car parked, I saw a deer roaming around. Couldn't tell you how many rabbits I've seen. I even seen a chipmunk. It's the first time I've seen a chipmunk in 2 years. When I first moved up to this area, my first year, there were chipmunks everywhere. I couldn't believe how many there were. And so all last summer, I was looking for chipmunks. I wanted to see if I could get a photograph of one. Didn't see a single one. And this one today at Pipestone was the first one I've seen this year. And it was the biggest chipmunk I've seen my entire life. I was so surprised. But anyway, you didn't come to hear about this chipmunk. You came to hear about the time that the Great Spirit worked through me to deliver a blessing. So let's get into it. So just to set the scene, I want to say the year was sometime later on in 2013. I was living in Las Vegas at the time. This was my second time living in Las Vegas. And while the first time I was on top of the world, I felt like the city was mine. I knew everyone in town. The second time was a completely different experience. It really was. All the people that I used to know had moved away. They were no longer there because the city was in a period of decline. The recession was in full effect. There were no jobs, no opportunities, and it was a much rougher experience the second time around. And after sticking it out for about a year, I decided I just wasn't going to keep torturing myself with that. Why am I struggling so hard to live in this desert heat? So I decided to leave, and what I wanted to do was to go back to Arkansas because I hadn't seen my family in a long time. I wanted to go spend time with my parents and my brother and my sister, and I had nieces that I wanted to get to know. So I decided to come back to Arkansas, and I was driving back. I had this, I forget the year, but I had a Chevy Blazer at the time. And I was driving back from Las Vegas to Arkansas with everything I owned packed into the back of this Blazer. And everything was going good until I crossed over from Arizona into New Mexico. I was about 7 miles into New Mexico when I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened or why it happened, but suddenly just the oil pan just dumped all the oil out of the engine. And it very quickly began making a noise that you never want to hear your car make, especially not as loud as it was making it. I knew it was a problem, so I pulled over immediately. I wasted no time. I pulled over and turned that engine off. So I guess we won't be doing any swimming here today, but that's okay. That's not why I came anyway. Anyway, I realized that it wasn't the end of 2013. This was in February of 2014, the end of February. And I had just driven into New Mexico. The car dumped the oil. I had to pull over and stop. And unfortunately, I was in the absolute middle of nowhere. So I had no cell phone service. So I couldn't use the internet to pull up a map. But I could, if I was willing to pay a charge for a roaming fee to access another carrier's network, I could make a phone call. So what I decided to do was to call my dad in Arkansas. I did. I called him up. I think it was about 10 o'clock at night, and he was awake and he answered the phone. So I called my dad and I explained the situation to him. I did. And he asked where I was at. I told him, I said, look, I don't have internet service on my phone, so I can't look at a map. And I said, the oil's dumped out of my car and I need to try to go get some new oil to see if I can fill it up and maybe get myself down to where there's somewhere that I can get some help. And I just wanted to know if he would look at a map for me and tell me if the closest place was to continue going forward or if I should double back and go backwards, because I'm in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico in February and it's very cold and I just want to go to the closest place. So could you look at a map and tell me if it's closer if I go forward or if I double back? And he said, so, well, where are you at? Fortunately, I knew exactly where I was. I was able to tell him what highway I was on. And I said, I just crossed over from Arizona into New Mexico, and I am at mile marker 7 because I can see it right in front of me. And when I told him this, and instead of pulling up a map and looking at directions, he just said, okay, let me put on my shoes and say goodbye to your mom and I'll be on my way. Now, you can imagine my shock at this. I was just wanting to look at a map and tell me if I should go forward or double back. But he said he's going to put on his shoes and come to get me. And I felt very relieved at that because I was in the middle of nowhere in a strange place, broke down on the side of the highway, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was just hoping I could refill the oil and limp the car into some guy that was going to tell me it's going to take $2,000 to fix it. So the fact that my dad was willing to come to my rescue meant a lot to me. And I have to say that's one hell of a dad. It really is. I was very lucky to have the father that I had. And for the rest of my life, I will always be thankful to him for coming to my rescue that night. And he did. He drove all night long. He did not stop. He drove all night long. And he got there the next morning, but it was the longest wait. Because again, remember that this is February and it is in New Mexico, the land of enchantment. And so you think of New Mexico as being a desert. You don't think about it getting cold, but believe me, that particular February, it was very cold. There was a light dusting of snow on the shoulder of the highway next to me, and I was freezing all night long. I was so cold. And the worst thing is that I couldn't even start the car engine to generate heat. So what I ended up doing was unpacking all of my belongings, all of my clothes, everything I had. I had a blanket, a pillow, and all of my clothes, and I just piled this stuff all on top of me. Like I was just spent the whole night sitting in the driver's seat of the Blazer underneath an enormous pile of clothes and everything that I could pull together to try to keep me warm through the night. So this night was really, really cold. And to make it worse, one thing that really got into my head was that the whole night I'm sitting there shivering, wishing I had some form of heat. And directly in front of me the whole night was this billboard, and it was advertising a hotel that was some number of miles away. And the advertisement for this hotel was a photograph of this woman just laying in the most comfortable looking bed that you can imagine, and she had all these big fluffy comfortable looking pillows and a nice white blanket just draped over her, and she looked so warm and cozy and comfortable. And I don't mind telling you that by the time that night was over, I had grown to hate that woman. She had everything I wanted and I was freezing. I hated that woman. But I made it through the night. I just kept telling myself all night, I kept saying, It's only 8 hours until sunrise. When the sun comes, it'll get warmer. It's only 6 hours till sunrise. When the sun comes, it'll get warmer. It's only 3 hours till sunrise. You know what? Sunrise never came that day. It did. The time for sunrise came and went by hours, but there was such, you know how wintertime has like that gray cloud cover that just lasts for months. It was a really thick layer of that, and it was just preventing the sunlight from penetrating. So while it did get just a slight bit lighter in the morning, it definitely didn't get any warmer. I could tell you that. I was still cold, freezing. Just a quick shot of this. This is a boulder that the explorers Nicollet and Fremont engraved their names on this stone in 1838. We talked a little bit more about this graffiti in the other video. So again, if you haven't seen that, I will leave a link down in the pinned comments to make it easy for you to find. But my dad, thankfully, he did come in the morning. He drove all night long from Arkansas without stop to get there. And I'll never forget, he was coming down the opposite side of the interstate because he had to pass me and double back. And I recognized his truck instantly when I saw it, even though he was on the other side of the interstate. I said, that's my dad. That's my dad's truck. I recognize it. And it was him, because when he drove by, he had saw me and he was beeping his horn and I could see him waving at me. And so a few minutes passed. It probably took him another 10 minutes to pass by and get an exit and double back. But he made it there in about 10 minutes or so after that. And I have to say, in my entire life, I don't think I had ever been more happy to see my dad. I gave him the biggest hug I've ever given him in my entire life. And 10 years without him, I wish I could go back and do that one more time. So on his way there that morning after stores opened, he did make one stop along the way to pick up some special sealants and other things to try to help with my car and to bring me some oil. And he said, I don't know if this is going to help. My dad was a mechanic at one time when he was younger. And he said, I don't know if this is going to do it, but it's all we could try. And so let's do this and start it up and see what happens. And so that's what we did. We attempted to drive it. I thought maybe if I drove a little bit, it'd give it a chance to circulate more. But it was just immediately obvious that that wasn't going to do it. So I did drive a few hundred yards more down the highway, and there was an exit there. There was nothing at this exit except like a gravel parking area, like where the highway department would park equipment and things during times when they were getting ready to do road work. So there was at least a place where I could pull off and not be on the shoulder of the highway anymore. So I pulled off there and I was trying to figure out what to do. And what I had told my dad was that this is going to take, you know, a couple of $1,000s to fix this car. And if I have to spend that much money, then I should really just get a different used car, you know, and just cut my losses. But I said, I don't want to just abandon the Blazer here on the side of the highway because I don't want to get some kind of fine in the mail or something one day. And so I wasn't really sure what to do about the car. And my dad said, well, what about that guy? I said, what guy? I said, what guy? We're in the middle of nowhere. What guy? And he said, that guy, and pointed. And I looked, and standing at the edge of the field, I don't know how he got there because he had no vehicle or anything, but there was an old Navajo man standing at the edge of a field, and he was just watching some horses. There was a few horses playing, and there were a couple of young ones that were running around playing, as young horses do. And this old Navajo man was just standing there at the edge of the field watching these horses. And so I walked over to him and proceeded to try to offer to give him this car. I know I already showed Winnewissa Falls in the other video, but I just wanted to include it in this one as well. So I walked over to this Navajo man, and I walked up and introduced myself. And I asked him if he wanted to have the Blazer. I said, I've broken down out here. My dad's come to pick me up, but I don't want to abandon this car. I was wondering if you want it. And at first he was just a little bit dismissive. He didn't even take his eyes off the horses. He just instantly said, "I can't afford that truck." And my response to him was, "I think that you can." I told him, I said, I'm pretty sure that you can afford this car because I'm not selling it. I'm offering to give it to you if you want it. And that got his attention. That did. That was a different response. It wasn't so dismissive. It was more shock. And he said, you're going to give that truck to me? And I said, yeah, if you want it. I said, but the thing is, it's broken down. It's going to need work. I don't know that you can even drive it out of here. And he just repeated himself again. He said, you're going to give that truck to me? And I said, yes, if you want it. I said, the only thing is, all of my stuff is packed into that truck. And so before I can let you have it, I have to unpack all of my stuff out of that truck and move it into the back of my dad's truck so that I can take it with me when I go. But as soon as I'm done with that, you can have it. And he said, oh no. He said, you don't have to do anything. You just wait right here. And so I did. I just stood there, and I don't know who this man was, if he was the chief or what, but I know that he made one phone call, and in about 15 minutes, what I presume to be was the entire tribe showed up. It was dozens of people showed up, and they did all of the work for me. They unpacked everything out of the back of my Blazer. They organized it. They packed it into the back of my dad's truck, tied it all down, did a better job than I ever would have in a million years, that's for sure. They did an incredible job, and because it was so many of them, they did it pretty quickly too, so it also saved me time. And I was really thankful for that help, but I was also just kind of awestruck because I was like, is this guy the chief? He made one phone call and all of these people came to help me, a stranger. While these people are doing all of the work to unpack the Blazer and repack it back into my dad's truck, there was an older lady there that I presumed was this old man's wife. And they had brought a lawn chair for her, and she was sitting in a lawn chair, but she was looking at me with she had this look on her face that I could just feel her thoughts. And those thoughts were, who is this white devil and what kind of tricks are they playing on us this time? Because that was the total vibe she was giving off. But I knew exactly what to do in this situation because, like I say, I was moving and had all of my stuff with me. So I didn't just have the keys to the Blazer. I had the title as well. So I went into the glove compartment, I got that out, and I signed the title. And instead of giving the title and the keys to the old man, I gave them to her. And after that, she was all smiles and all happy. After I gave the keys and the title to this lady, then the old man stepped up to me, and I'm pretty sure he had to have been her husband. They were the only two people there in that age group. Everyone else was in their 30s or 40s. But he came up to me and he said, I just want you to know that when something like this happens, what we say is that the Great Spirit has worked through you to deliver a blessing to someone. So I know that you're worried and you're stressed, and I don't want you to feel like you are losing the vehicle. I want you to understand that you are gaining something very sacred and special because the Great Spirit chose you out of everyone he could choose. He chose for you to deliver this blessing to us today. And we're very thankful. And I want you to know that it's something to be humbled by and cherished. So he told me this, that I should be humbled and appreciative that I was lucky enough to be selected to deliver a blessing. And indeed, I actually was, despite the circumstances, when he put it in that perspective. It did seem like something that was sort of like an honor thing, that I was chosen for this. And I did feel good about it, but at the same time, I was thinking, wow, I wish that if I was going to be chosen to deliver a blessing, perhaps I shouldn't have to endure such a hardship to go through it. But if that's the way the universe is going to work out today, then I hope it works out to the benefit of someone, even if that's at my expense. that was truly the outlook that I had in that moment. Just something about that man's words were very soothing to me, and they gave me a good perspective on it. And yeah, I was sad that I was losing my car, but I was thankful I had my dad come to my rescue. My dad came to my rescue. and so I had my own blessings going on, so I was okay. It was going to cost me some money to get a new car, and I didn't know what I was going to get or how I was going to get it or where I was going to get it. So I had all of that to look forward to. But at least something good was going to come out of this. And so I was happy with those thoughts. And it turned out that, yeah, I did have to go through some hardships to deliver that blessing. But it all worked out even, Stephen, in the end, because as we left there, we began the journey back home after everything was packed up into the back of my dad's truck. And we were driving home. And my mother, my mom, she also was involved in the rescue of quackers that day, because she came through and she said, well, I've got the Mustang. Whoa, what's going on? Whoa. So she said, I've got the Mustang. I don't really use it anymore. So if you want, you can have that. And that was incredibly nice. I love you, Mom. Thank you. So I gave away the Blazer, but I got a Mustang. I didn't have to come up with a car. I didn't have to worry about that. Before I even made it out of the state of New Mexico, the problem was already solved. And both those people received a blessing, and I did as well. So that was incredible. And I'm going to tell you, I drove that Mustang for 10 years. 10 years I did. 15 years. I drove it for 15 years. I drove it into the ground. I hit a deer in it and smashed the fender. And eventually the exhaust was going out, and I didn't want to spend the money that it was going to take to repair that exhaust. And so I got a different cheap car. And when I say cheap, I mean that last year in 2025, I paid $500 for a car. I did. Another blessing. Thank you. I didn't want to pay to repair the car, and I gave a car away. I got a car for free, and I just wanted to keep that going. I didn't want to keep the car because I wasn't going to do anything with it anymore, but I didn't want it to go to a junkyard. I wanted to give it to someone who didn't have a car, who needed a car, and who could maybe be willing to put the money and the time into it to get this thing running right and to give it a second life. And that's what would have made me most happy, is for this car to just live on, because this car was part of a blessing. And so, being that the car came into my life for free, I decided that it should leave in the same way. And I gave it away to one of my coworkers, because he had told me that he spends $175 a week taking Lyft to and from work. And so I figured he could put that $175 into the Mustang and eventually get it running the way it needs to be running. And so, yeah, the car came into my life for free. It left the same way that it came, and I was able to continue that blessing from 15 years earlier. The blessing lived on and got transferred to my coworkers. So anyway, that's the story of the time, and it's a quick story. I know it's a quick story, but that's the story of the time that the Great Spirit worked through me to deliver a blessing, and then worked through someone else, my wonderful mother, to deliver a blessing back to me in return. And then 15 years later, it just bounced on to a coworker. So it's still out there today, still working its magic. So I love this story most of all, though, just because it involves my dad. It was Father's Day. Just last week was Father's Day. And I know that you probably called your dad on Father's Day, but I just ask you to please, even though you just called him for Father's Day, if you have the ability to call and talk to your dad, please do it right now, this minute. Even if you just did, even if you just talked to him yesterday, call him again right now and tell him that you love him, because I wish more than anything that I could call my dad, and I'll never have that ability again. And there are lots of us out there in the world in that situation, right? It's just part of the cycle of life. But I would love more than anything to hear my dad's voice today. So if you have the ability to call your dad, call him right now and tell him that you love him. So anyway, that's about it for today's story. I'm starting to feel a little bit sappy. I don't want to tear up here on camera, so I'm going to cut it short. But again, the week 2, Wednesday's video here at the Pipestone National Monument, I will drop a link to that in the pinned comment down below. And coming up Wednesday, I still got the bonus adventure to Brandon, South Dakota. I'm going to plant the seeds of a legend in that town, and I'm going to have a lot of fun doing it, and I'm going to bring all of you along for the ride. So Wednesday at 1, please check back. If you haven't done so already, please tap the subscribe button below to make sure you don't miss it. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out a lot. Yeah, that's my personal story. I try to not do too many of these because I prefer to focus on history rather than myself, but that's my personal story for now. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really do hope you will call your dad. Please do. Till then, thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. Quackers out.